This weekend we had a horrific act of violence, actually several acts of violence in Charlottesville. I want to tell you about them. First of all, this is of course from a Unite the Right rally. So when they are talking about uniting the right, who are they talking about? Well, they themselves have said that it was white nationalists, the alt-right, and then of course KKK and Nazi images, flags, hoods, all showed up at the rally. And if that is their version of the right, well, I guess they were united in a sense. A lot more people showed up than I honestly would have anticipated, which is also bone chilling. It started on Friday. The main rally was supposed to be Saturday, and it was. But on Friday night, I want to show you some of the pictures from the rally that they held there. Yes, they brought torches. That imagery is not an accident. It is totally intended. And they started chanting White Lives Matter, and then blood and soil, blood and soil. That's a Nazi chant. And then there were those in the crowd who unmistakably gave the Nazi salute. Now, does that make every person in the crowd a Nazi or a member of the KKK? I suspect not. Was the intent of that rally incredibly clear? Yes. So you don't go to a rally with torches about white power and not know what they're talking about. So anyone who claims, oh golly gee, I had no idea, well then you're one of the most ignorant people on the planet. Now they knew exactly what they were doing, and if you notice, they were around a statue. Well, that was part of the point of this whole thing, which is to make sure that Confederate statues are not taken down in the South. That was a statue of Robert E. Lee, and people that were at the rally talking about protecting white heritage and what he fought for. And of course, among the things he fought for, in fact, primary in the things that he fought for was slavery. So white supremacy back in the day, of course, meant literally that. We rule over you and we will enslave other races. Now, that's not what's happening today in the South, except for these guys who say that's the heritage that they want to protect. And like some of their ancestors, they too resorted to violence. That brings us to Saturday. So on Saturday, then we had people who were coming in from all parts of the country, and let's see some pictures of that here. And as you can see, they have some white supremacist flags I'm not familiar with. They've got Confederate flags, they've got swastikas, and then the clashes began because the counter-protesters were also there. And so cops were trying to stay in between them, trying to prevent violence. Unfortunately, it didn't work. And the police have gotten some criticism here as well for not stepping into the right-wing side as they threatened violence, and according to some reports, maced other people in the crowd, attacked them with even gas canisters. Some people understandably saying, well, if they were carrying Skittles or maybe loose cigarettes, would you have attacked them? Not attack them, but for God's sake, at least contain them. As you're about to see, the fact that they did not contain them had deadly consequences. Unfortunately, 2 officers also died in what happened on Saturday. It was not in the midst of the protest. It was a helicopter that they were using to cover the protest and to maintain some sort of order and at least track what was happening. Fortunately, that went down, and 2 officers were killed there as well. And there they are, Lieutenant H.J. Cullen and Burke M.M. Bates. Every time you hear the stories of people who were killed, it's absolutely heartbreaking. Bates got into the aviation part of the Virginia State Police just in the last year. His wife gave him a Christmas present of learning how to fly. So, and his birthday was supposed to be on Sunday. Every part of this story is heartbreaking. So we're about to get to the worst part, including of course the officers dying. Heather Heyer was killed. So 3 killed, 19 injured, about 35 went to the hospital and were treated, 19 more seriously injured obviously than the others. And I'm gonna show you some videos here in a second, but first, before I show you the car crash, I want you to get a sense of these protesters, because there's a lot of nonsense, of course, is always online, pretending that they were not hateful. This is just, I mean, you already saw the pictures, you already saw the torches and all the flags, etc. But here's one sense of it. This is actually Fox News who's trying to get their point of view, boy, they got it.
Sir, are you in charge here?
No.
Where are you guys headed, do you know?
Not exactly sure yet. No. Yeah, we're trying to survive. Dude, they're fucking gassing us, dude. Degenerates. The fucking Jew lovers are gassing us, man.
Pardon his French?
No, that was not French. Maybe German, but not French. Of course, President of Germany is a much better place than what they had back in the day, and arguably much tougher on these kind of neo-Nazis than we are. You get a sense of how hateful that group was, and it's not. It was not a matter of he said, she said. It was not a matter of both sides do it. One side clearly had a very, very bad intent going in. And so now, speaking of bad intent, that unfortunately brings us to this particular neo-Nazi and James Alex Fields Jr., who's 20 years old and who was the criminal who killed Heather Heyer, is an avowed fan of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and concentration camps. Now, what I'm about to show you is really, really heartbreaking. It's him running into the crowd. So if you're uncomfortable with it, I understand. But I want you to see what hate looks like in America. Here it is. The second video we have of a different angle is, believe it or not, a little worse. So another warning, and here's that same scene.
Go.
So not only vicious, mean, and apparently killer, but also stupid. Like he thought he'd get away with it. There's cameras everywhere. He's trying to do a hit and run there, which of course he was charged with, along with attempted homicide. I think the second angle was worse because you get a sense of him revving up for it and how he tried to pick up speed before he hit him to make sure he caused the maximum amount of damage. He was from Ohio. He came into the state of Virginia apparently with the intent to do harm, and unfortunately accomplished that mission. So here's some more detail. Groups in Charlottesville, as Huffington Post reports, beat each other with flagpoles and bats, threw punches, chanted slogans, and used chemical sprays on each other at Downtown Park. Some reporters covering the event were doused in raw sewage. So they came weaponized, and by the way, it's not just all the things that we just mentioned there, but there were people dressed up in militia outfits. Whether any of them are veterans, of course, is a completely different question. But they like to play dress up, and unfortunately, the important part of that dress up is the weapons that they brought. So they brought guns, they brought rifles, and by the way, that makes it a little bit. And that's Alex Fields Jr. in the middle there, and whatever Nazi hate group sign that is. I don't know what the hell that. I can't keep up with all the hate groups, but he was part of that crew before he went and got in his car and hurt all those people and killed Heather Heyer, according to the authorities. So they brought more serious weapons too, and to be a little understanding of the police officers on the ground, one side is heavily armed with guns, so that makes it harder for the cops to engage. This is all horrific, man. So now we have Nazis committing violence in America, and police officers a little reluctant to engage. You could argue for many different reasons, but one of them might be, and I get it, that one side is armed to the teeth. So I mean, how much are we? And this is where we are, because we're told and the laws are passed that guns are awesome and weapons are great, and any great American would bring weapons to a protest. Well, now we've got weapons everywhere, and so what are the cops supposed to do? So anyway, I do want to give credit to Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the Justice Department. not a guy I often give credit to, but in this case, Sessions said Saturday night that State U.S. Attorney Rick Mountcastle has opened a federal investigation into the violence at the rally with the full support of the Justice Department. And Trump was very equivocal, but Sessions was unequivocal, saying that it is likely domestic terrorism, and that certainly they would pursue charges against Fields, but perhaps others as well. So that is a good, strong statement from the Attorney General. Now, finally, let's turn to what the president did, and his reaction was, I would argue, hideous. I want you to watch it and notice who he doesn't name.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. It's been going on for a long, long time.
So he said several times they're on many sides. Both sides do it. Well, one side showed up to do a counter protest. And look, when you have violence from any side, I condemn it completely. Antifa at Berkeley, et cetera, and Antifa showed up here. And any kind of agitation from either side is despicable, and we point it out. But in this case, there was no lack of clarity. It was the right wing who did it. It was the neo-Nazis who did it. It was the white nationalists who did it. So Antifa didn't run into, and certainly the overwhelming majority of peaceful counter-protesters there didn't run into people, didn't kill people. So what sides are you talking about? So you're trying to create an equivalency between the Nazis and the non-Nazis? When you say many sides did it, and he refused to call out white nationalists, he refused to call out the KKK, the Nazis, and all the other people that showed up. Wouldn't do it, didn't do it for 2 days. Finally, after immense pressure for 48 hours and almost every other Republican senator calling him out on it, finally today he said, well, yeah, sure, KKK, white supremacists are bad. Wow, thank you so much. To give you a sense of why that's such a green light, and in some ways the worst part of this story, the Daily Stormer, which is a neo-Nazi website, saw Trump's reaction to that and celebrated and said, you see that? He's not condemning us. Richard Spencer said, oh, he seems like he's condemning the other side, Antifa. And Richard Spencer is one of the organizers of this and a white nationalist. So if you're not sure what he meant, that's you should be sure in what he meant by that statement, which is I refuse to condemn white nationalists because they're my base. Well, the people who are not confused by it were those white nationalists. They celebrated. They were ecstatic that the president basically, after a murder, did not give them the red light and appeared to give them the green light, at least according to their own interpretation. The brown shirts are here, and they committed an act of violence, and a horrific one, let alone the entirety of the march, and the F word was used against gay people, anti-Jewish slogans, one after another, of course, racist slogans, and the list goes on, and then they commit violence. If we don't all stand up and fight against it, they're gonna take that as another green light, and they're gonna take that as encouragement of, hey, violence works. You think they're gonna win the battle of ideas? The old bankrupt ideology about the differences in races, we defeated that a long, long time ago. They could rise up all they want. They have no facts on their side. Why do you think they resort to violence? Because they're wrong. They can't win a battle of ideas. They can't win a debate, so they go the route of violence. And we all as a society have to band together and do it the right way and make sure that these guys do not take hold in America, and they're allowed to have any opinion and speech that they like, but they're not allowed to commit acts of violence. And if we don't discourage that today, we will rue the day that we didn't. So I'm glad to see the Justice Department is on it, local authorities are on it, but this is intolerable, and this isn't the US. And does America look great again? Doesn't look very good right now, but I believe in America, and I think we will rally, and I think we will defeat these monsters that go bump in the night. Help us build independent media. Become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.